This meeting is being recorded.
All right, Michael, thanks for joining us for our third video on scaling models. And now we're going to look at Scrum at Scale and hear about some of the experiences and learnings that you've had from that. And it'll be really interesting to see what the differences are from our learning perspective compared to some of the other models you've already talked about. So tell us a little about your experiences.
What a pleasure, Cherie. I'm super pumped to speak with you about Scrum at Scale and how it's impacted my thinking. Scrum at Scale talks about the executive action team. The acronym is EAT, and the joke is that it eats impediments. So the executive action team is the team that's responsible for increasing agility in the organization, rolling out Scrum at Scale, making sure that Scrum is being done in a way that serves the organization. And so it typically consists of a set of very senior people in the organization. And one of the things that it does is that it looks at and eats impediments that get moved up the organization from the Scrum teams, possibly through multiple levels, all the way up to the E. One thing that I found is very important is that this is not just another meeting with executives in the room. Sometimes I've seen that occur at companies where they simply schedule yet another conversation. So agile skill, awareness, and mindset is very, very important in that conversation. It's not just the same thinking. It's not just the same practices. And so what I've seen work best in organizations that are new to agile or new to Scrum is to make sure that there are one, two, even more people who are very experienced agilists. So that might be an enterprise agile coach. It might be a Scrum master with multiple years of experience at different companies who play a key role in that E, not just working with the teams, but also working with the executives on that team to help them better understand Scrum at Scale, understand Scrum, and understand Agile. A second thing that I find fascinating about Scrum at Scale is the reference model. So Scrum at Scale talks about the fractal nature of scaling. And the reference model is the tiniest piece that works in the organization for scaling. So Scrum at Scale starts off by trying some things, and then when it finds something that actually works, something that actually scales above the team level, it captures that in the form of a reference model. So this is scaling Scrum that works at this particular company. And as we know, Scrum at Scale is going to look differently at different companies. And so defining this reference model, here's something that works at this particular company is very valuable. And then once that is captured, all of those learnings, those practices, that perspective is captured in the form of a reference model, then it can be duplicated throughout the organization. And then the final thing is that the Scrum at Scale guide, which is analogous to the Scrum guide, refers repeatedly to Scrum at Scale as an operating model. So the operating model is how the sausage is made. And so that's a very interesting perspective and thing to think about. So imagine that you were going to build the same product and the same service that your organization is building today, and you could put together the Lego pieces in any way you wanted. You could have any roles, you could have any artifacts, you could have any ceremonies that you wanted. How would you put together that organization? That's your operating model. And so thinking about it in that way and viewing Scrum at Scale as a particular perspective on the operating model that an organization might use to scale Scrum is something that has been quite interesting and fascinating to me. So those are my thoughts on Scrum at Scale.
What I like about this is that flexibility. So it sounds like Scrum at Scale is not taking something out of a box and trying to shove you into the box of what they've done at other companies, but really looking at your company and saying, well, let's try some things. Let's see what works for you, because Scrum at Scale for you is going to be different than Scrum at Scale with my last client. Would you say that that's true?
Oh, that's absolutely true.
Huh. Very interesting. Well, Michael, I've learned a lot today about these different scaling models, things that each one of them have that are helpful and that you could potentially pull into your own organization and kind of create your own operating model for how you're going to scale Scrum. And I know that we've got one more video where you're going to talk about building your own model. Just, hey, I'm working with a client, they feel a need to scale. We don't really feel like we need to pull in something that's pre-done in the industry. And how can we do this better? But possibly even borrowing from some of those others. So it'll be really great to hear some of your experiences with that in our next video.
Absolutely.